Well, we welcome you to our regular Thursday morning broadcast. I'm Tony Hammock here in the studio, aka Charlie's Kitchen with Charlie Fuquay, the king of controversy. And we're excited about spending some time with you today. Thank you for tuning in, listening. And we've been off the air. Charlie and I have been discussing some things that have been going on in the news. And I'd like to just kind of pick up that theme with you as you guys tune in and listen.
I know you want to talk about ISIS today.
I do, but I'm not.
Could I briefly talk about one other issue that's really in the news?
Sure.
Then I want to move to ISIS and spend most of the time on ISIS.
Okay.
And this is what's going on in Ferguson, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've seen it, hour after hour after hour of it. And here's how I imagine it happened. A white police officer woke up one morning and thought, I've been a police officer for 6 years and I've never discharged my weapon except in target practice. I think I'll go kill a black man today. Don't you think that's kind of what happened?
I think it would be a child. It wouldn't be a man.
He killed a black child.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's an 18-year-old, 6'4", 5", big. They call him Big Mike.
260 pounds.
Yeah, he's a big fella.
Yeah.
And it's on both sides of this story, there's a lot of passion. There's a lot of that. And I was kind of in the same boat when I first heard the story. I tend to err on the side of trusting authority. But I've also seen where people in authority have abused that authority.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm cautious when but I kind of went through the same mental gyrations you just described. I was like, okay, here's a guy, I just feel like shooting somebody and I'm going to kill him in cold blood in the street.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Now just think about that. What is the worst nightmare scenario in a cop's life? A white cop's life. It is shooting a black man. They're going to avoid doing that at all costs, except if there is no other choice.
Yeah.
I mean, his career is over if he did nothing wrong.
Right.
Here's what I believe really happened. Okay? He sees two black men walking down the middle of the street. Now, he doesn't know that just before he saw them, they did a strong-arm robbery in, I don't know if it was a liquor store or a convenience store.
He said he didn't know, but now he's saying he did know.
Well, I've heard both ways, but
yeah, I don't know.
We may get the details of when he found out, and it may have been kind of during the event. Okay? But anyway, we do know that these two men robbed a store just a few minutes before.
Yeah.
Okay? And the video is obvious. And with my experience seeing people on drugs, I would tell you, I think this man was on drugs. This Big Mike.
Yeah.
His demeanor. I mean, his attitude of, I'm going to steal what I want and don't you dare confront me about it.
Yeah, and didn't he shove the guy?
A little bitty guy.
Yeah, he just gave him a shove.
Yeah.
Get out of my way.
And then after he left, he came back to intimidate the guy some more. Okay? Then they walk out and they're walking down the middle of the street.
Yeah.
Now, that's kind of obviously not the place to be.
Especially if you just committed a crime and you want to keep a low profile.
Yeah.
You want to steal was it cigarellos?
Cigarellos. Yeah. Anyway, here's what I think happened. At the time the police officer saw them walking down the street, he didn't know about the crime. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going on what I've heard.
Okay.
Okay? We don't know all the facts yet.
No, right.
Okay? But he sees these two guys walking down the middle of the street obstructing traffic.
Yeah.
And he tells them, hey, get out of the street.
Right.
And the big guy, Big Mike, reaches into his car and punches him in the face and reaches for his gun. Okay? He fights him off. The big guy walks away. Now the police officer drives somewhere, I'm not sure where, but a few hundred feet. And I think that's when he probably got the information about the robbery. Okay?
Met the description.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know exactly how it all transpires, but the officer says something to these two guys. This Big Mike turns around and starts coming towards the police officer.
Yeah.
The police officer tells him to stop. Okay?
Freeze.
He doesn't stop. He keeps walking towards the guy and in fact starts running towards the police officer.
Yeah, bum rushing him or whatever.
The police officer pulls his gun, fires warning shots. Stop! He keeps running. Now I want to ask you a question. How smart is it to rush a cop that's got a loaded weapon that's already fired warning shots at you? This is not somebody in his right mind.
No.
That's why I say he's on some kind of drugs and it's more than marijuana.
Yeah, they were talking, I don't know, has the toxicology report come in yet?
All I've heard is it was positive for marijuana and there may be more drugs coming. That's all I've heard, okay? Anyway, the policeman fires warning shots. He's coming. Now, by the way, this is happening in seconds.
Right, sure.
I mean, this isn't where the police officer has minutes to radio for help or think about it. It's happening in seconds.
Yeah.
This guy, a 260-pound man who just punched him in the face and tried to wrestle his gun away from him, is rushing toward him. Now, if this man gets to him, he's going to take his gun away from him and kill him.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
That's what I would think.
If everything that you described is exactly what happened,
Yeah.
that would be what I would think.
Okay.
I've got to stop this guy.
So the police officer follows protocol and shoots the man in a wing. Shoots him in the arm, maybe twice in the arm. Okay? He keeps coming. So then he shoots him again, and I believe wings him at the very top of the head. And then he puts one in his eye and drops him like a rock. And at this point, this guy is feet from him.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to figure out anything this police officer did that was wrong.
Right. Well,
I can't think of it.
Here's what I've noticed that I find kind of strange. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion, and there are a lot of wounds close to the surface for a lot of people on these kinds of things, and so they react without knowing the facts. But we don't really know any facts. I mean, we know what we've heard two guys talk about behind a video. We know what some people said they saw. We know what other people said they saw. And these stories are conflicting.
Absolutely.
So we don't really know the facts. So I think it's an error in judgment to make a dogmatic judgment without knowing the facts.
I think you're absolutely right.
And so what we've got on both sides of the argument, it's like, my first thought was, it's probably not a black child on his knees with his hands up, surrendering, getting killed execution style in the streets of St. Louis. I had a hard time believing that. Now, I'm not saying that's impossible, but I'm saying I had a hard time believing that's what happened. And that's kind of the way
it's portrayed.
It's being pitched.
Yeah. Now, let me suggest something.
It's
let's just say it was a black child on his knees with his hands up, shot in the back, because that's being portrayed. And by the way, the proof is in. He wasn't shot in the back at all.
No, right.
Okay,
right.
Shot in the back, execution style, by this cop that just wanted to kill a black person that day. Let's just say that's what happened. Okay? Does that justify the behavior we're seeing?
No. Not to me. It depends on what behavior you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about breaking in, rioting and looting. Did the person who owns the store that you're looting kill that kid?
No.
And here's the thing. Now, I'm a white person, I know lots of wonderful black people.
Sure.
But what we're seeing on the TV makes black people look pretty bad.
Well, I think too, when you say all black people or all white people, obviously those are generalities. But, I'm in agreement with you that I don't understand how looting a tire store where that business owner could have been the second cousin to the guy that got shot.
Yeah.
What is that going to do? You know, well, I get it. You're frustrated and all that. To me, it's almost like an excuse just to loot.
Yeah.
It's like I want to steal something. Oh, hey, guess what? They shot Big Mike.
Yeah.
Let's go looting.
Yeah.
You know, wow, that's really convoluted. I mean, that kind of thinking, if that's really what's going on in the minds of people, that's twisted.
It is a mentality that is hard for me to get my mind wrapped around.
Yeah.
You know, you wait for the facts to come in, you wait for the investigation, but here's what I can't get my mind wrapped around. I cannot believe this police officer wanted to shoot that guy. I just don't believe that. I believe he was in a position where he had no choice. That's generally when police officers shoot people. Now, you know, are there exceptions? Probably. But most police officers don't want to shoot people.
Right. I mean, and I've seen, since the thing with Michael Brown happened, I've seen a lot of videos of police brutality on Facebook. They've started to surface. And they've shown officers taking people who are handcuffed. I mean, a person who's handcuffed is pretty
helpless,
subdued. Yeah, they're pretty much not. I mean, they could spit at you, they could bite you, you know. And in the defense of the officers, you don't really know what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
But
they can kick you.
Well, the officers kicking them in the face when they're down on the ground handcuffed. You think, ooh, man. I mean, I get your adrenaline gets to rushing and all that, but if it's a lady. You know, I saw a couple guys throw a lady into a cell in jail, handcuffed, face first into a steel bench. I mean, that steel bench did not even flinch when she hit it.
Yeah.
And she just crumpled, you know, I mean, I don't know if it broke any bones or anything, but I thought, oh man, what? And again, you can't, I understand it seems just impossible to ever justify that kind of act. Mm-hmm. But you don't know what that lady just did either. But again, even if she did spit right in her face and bite a guy's nose off or, you know, whatever she may have done, still, you know, these guys, and I've ridden around some police officers before, and I'll tell you a quick story. I was riding with an officer up in Sharp County, and he leans over to me. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm just cross-eyed, dog-tired, you know. He's tired. We're both talking. He says, hey, you know, I'm sorry. You know, we didn't get to do more tonight. I was like, hey, don't you fret about that. I'm real happy we didn't get to do a whole lot tonight. And, I mean, it wasn't 3 minutes after he said that, the radio comes on, and they say, hey, there's shots fired. Oh. And we're on our way to this call, and he starts to, hey, you know how to shoot this weapon? Can you shoot this .223 rifle I've got right here? I'm like, yeah, I think I can. I mean, it's bolt action, it's got a safety, you know, pretty straightforward. You know how to acquire target. And he was asking me these questions, you know, and his adrenaline, my adrenaline, was just through the roof. I mean, you're in some ways, you're kind of going to war.
Yeah.
And so we got to the location, drove around, looking for the shooter. And, you know, thank God we never found anybody. You know, I was happy. You know, I was really happy we didn't find anybody. But I'll never forget that moment when in my friend, who's the officer, and another fellow officer were kind of talking, and that call came in. And my eyes opened up, and I looked at those guys, and I watched them kind of swallow, and I watched them, okay, here we go. I mean, I thought, gosh, these guys do this every night.
Yeah.
They do this every single night. I thought, wow.
And in Sharp County, it's probably nothing like St. Louis, Missouri.
Right. And it's a big county. You know, they got to cover a lot of ground. But, yeah, you're right. The crime rate, I'm sure, in Sharp County is hopefully a lot lower than St. Louis County. But, you know, I think everybody just needs to chill out, you know, on this thing. Obviously, it's horrible that an 18-year-old young man was killed. And no doubt about that. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that if he was on drugs, that he was on drugs. It's a tragedy that he felt that he could just walk into a convenience store and rob some cigarillos or whatever he stole. That's a tragedy. All these things that have led up to this event, you know, and I think I'm gonna go back in time here and paint with a broad brush, but I think there's something incredibly significant about a population base that at one time was enslaved to another population base. And I'm not going to talk about black people, but I'm going to talk about the Israeli people in the Bible. Because you got the Israelites who were enslaved to the Egyptians. And when you are a slave of another person, it changes your thinking. Mm-hmm. And in order to submit and serve, and especially if there's violence and abuse that goes on toward the slave, it affects the way you think about life. It affects your paradigms. It affects how you approach life. And I think it, in a lot of ways, it kills your incentive. I mean, it kills your motivation. It really has a powerful impact on your ability to dream and create and build, and because you just can't do that as a slave.
Well, I disagree with you on that, because there have been some slaves that have dreamed and built and done great things.
Yeah.
In the Bible and in American slave times.
Well, let's say it's the exception more than the norm.
Oh, I'd say that's probably true.
But in general, it's an oppressive existence, being a slave of someone else. So one generation it's bad, but for multiple generations I think it's worse. Yeah. And I think you can see this with the Israelite people when God tells them, okay, you're not slaves in Egypt anymore. You've plundered the Egyptians, you've got their earrings and their nose rings and all their gold. They're sending you out, you're free. Now, go. And so they go, they're following Moses, and they get to the Red Sea. Cross the Red Sea, they get to the Promised Land, and God specifically tells them, you can do this. You can conquer, you can win, you can overcome, you can take this Promised Land. And what do they say?
Oh, we can't do this. There's giants living there.
10 out of 12 say, we look like grasshoppers to them. And it doesn't say this in the Bible, but I almost guarantee you they never interviewed a single one of those people and said, what do we look like to you?
Yeah.
And they said they had such a horrible self-image. They had such a horrible identity imprinted into them from that slave lifestyle that when it came time to hear the word of God and obey it, they just didn't have it in them to do it. They just couldn't do it. Joshua could do it. Joshua was the champion in the bunch. He said, hey, God...
And wasn't Caleb too?
Yeah, Caleb was really the one. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Caleb was the one that really took the lead. Joshua kind of gets credit for, like they're the same. But if you really read the story, Caleb is way ahead of Joshua. He's kind of dragging Joshua along. Joshua's like, well, okay, if you say so, Caleb. So Caleb had that champion, conquering, victorious mentality. And I don't know how he had it over the others, but he had it. And so... I think sometimes in some subcultures in America, you've got behavioral patterns and ways of thinking that are generational. Mm-hmm. And there's certain things that can help, and there's certain things that hinder those generational thinking patterns.
Let me say that, though, because I'm going to disagree with you in part. 2 generations ago, which was closer to slavery, the black population of America was not as it is today. It was more hardworking. It was more morally upright. The morals and the culture of black America have been declining for 3 generations. Would you say I'm wrong in saying that?
Well, I'd have to say the same thing about white.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I'd have to say the same thing about the whole country.
Yeah.
I couldn't just say just the blacks.
Oh, absolutely. Probably more so the whites than the blacks.
It's everybody that's in the moral decay. There's definitely an influence in America for moral decay, and it's increasing. If you look at any of the measurable metrics to measure those things, it's across the board, So,
which is really where I'm going with this whole thing. You look at those people and what they did, and you look at that moral mindset and decay, and you have to ask, where are we headed as a nation?
Yeah.
And it's not a pretty picture.
Yeah. Well, I was just listening to Alex Jones on last night on YouTube. I was looking at some Alex Jones videos, And he used a word that I've never heard him use before, and I was rather refreshed to hear him say it. But you know what he said? He said, we need an awakening.
Yeah, we do.
And he said, we need a spiritual awakening in America.
Well, that's what you and I have been saying
I
for
know,
a long
and I was
time.
like, wow, is this Alex Jones saying this? This is good.
Because he's not a real religious guy.
He's more like a deist, I would say,
Yeah.
than a hardcore fundamentalist Christian guy.
Yeah.
He might be a Christian, and I don't know.
Well, if he is, I don't know proof of that.
Yeah, I don't know that he's ever come out and said Jesus Christ is the only way to the Father, or made some kind of doctrinal statement, But anyway, I think the problem in some of these cultures in America where you have this kind of reaction to authority, it's an authority problem. And it goes all the way back to the family.
Yeah.
And I really believe that a father and a mother together are better at raising a child in general than just a father or just a mother by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look into certain segments of the culture, you see that there's a huge absence of fathers that are involved in the life of their children.
Let me say this. My big thing is we could solve every problem we've got if we just obey the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Okay? There is a commandment that says, honor your father and mother. And it's the only commandment with a promise.
Right.
And that promise is so that your days may be long on the earth. Now, I would suggest to you that black, especially males, do not honor their fathers.
Yeah.
In many cases, because their fathers aren't around. Okay?
Well, a lot of the times, too, their fathers are dishonorable men.
Well, that's right.
It's harder to honor a
It is
dishonorable
harder,
person
yeah.
than an honorable person.
Yeah, and the lifespan of black American males is not long.
Yeah. Well, I know I heard about a study that was done in a prison, and the warden and some of the other officials in the prison decided they were going to try to help the inmates connect with family. So Mother's Day was rolling around. They provided Mother's Day cards to all the inmates and had them write their mom a card. And they had 90+% participation. It was a big hit in the prison. The guys liked it. It kind of helped change the atmosphere in the prison a little bit. And so they thought, wow, this was a big hit. Let's do this again for Father's Day.
Yeah.
And they had less than 5% participation. So I think when you destroy family.
And by the way, the United States government policy caused that. It did. It's our welfare policy that destroyed. You used to be able to say the black family in America, but today it's all families in America.
Yeah, I think too. I think it's sin issues. There's unbridled sin. I was talking to my son, who's 16, and he's getting to be a little older. He's starting to think about things like, when he was younger, you would never talk to him about these kinds of things. But I started talking to him about adultery, and I was like, "Son, you know what adultery is?" And he was like, "Yeah," and he explained it where I knew he knew what it was. And I told him, I said, I cannot tell you how many families I've seen destroyed because of adultery. And you think of the hypersexualized media and the music videos in the white culture and in the black culture and all that goes on to it's not helping. It's not helping our families. It's planting seeds of lust in the minds of people that not everyone carries those thoughts out. But some people do. And if you destroy families, if you cause dads to abandon their children for whatever reason, whether it's pleasure or sex or drugs
or a government check,
career or a handout, whatever it might be, you're destroying that culture.
I want to tell you a story. I was one time in the Springdale jail as a Gideon, handing out little New Testaments. And I was handing them out to the guys there, and I said, God is like your heavenly Father.
Yeah.
And one of the guys who had taken a testament threw it back through the bars at me. And he said, if your God's anything like a father, I don't want anything to do with him, because all my father ever did was beat the crap out of me. Yeah. You know, as fathers, we have responsibility to, how can I put this? Act out and be an image of God to our children. Because we stand in the authority of God over our children. God has placed us in that authority. It is an awesome responsibility that, I'll be honest, I don't think I understood until my kids were grown. And fathers ought to understand it a lot younger than that.
Yeah. And over the years, you know, I've watched, I was a youth pastor for 9 years, and I was a Teen Challenge staff member before that. And I'm a pastor now, and I've been a pastor for 7 years. And, you know, I watch people a lot. That's what I do pretty much. And I watch interpersonal relationships, and I draw these conclusions. And I'm not overtly dogmatic about these conclusions that I draw, but over the years I've seen certain patterns. And what I've noticed about families is that sometimes there'll be a man in the house who's consumed with work.
Oh, that's
and he's
typical.
Providing for the family. He's taking care of all the material needs, but he's emotionally, there's no emotional support for the kids from the father. And traditionally that's kind of been the role. But I've noticed that especially girls, if there's not emotional support from their father in that home, the girls tend to be looking for emotional support anywhere they can find it. They tend to be more boy crazy, more interested in those kinds of things than the girls who have a father at home who's emotionally connected and supportive verbally, the proper kind of physical affection, time, showing compassion, dialoguing, you know, all those kinds of things. If those things are in place, it almost makes a girl bulletproof for monkey business going on as she's growing up. Now, I'm not saying, you know, that girl at any time, she's a free moral agent. She can do whatever she wants, whenever she wants. And I've seen that. I've seen parents who did almost, I mean, it would seem that they did everything right, and their kids can go off, you know, go off the beam.
Yeah.
But in general, when there is an emotionally supportive family, it seems like it protects children from going off and doing things that put them in a position of danger, you know, to where they're going to commit crimes or they're going to do different things. And I know that Michael Brown's father has been on television. You know, he's wearing a shirt, I think it's his dad, I'm assuming that. It says something about justice. You know, I want justice for Michael, you know. And I want justice for Michael. I totally want justice for Michael too. And his mother and his father are there. And but again, I don't know what role this man played in Michael's life growing up. I also believe that there can be other role models in the life of a child that can really help and pick up the slack. Let's say you're a man and you work in another state. You make great money, you've got a great job, but you're gone. I mean, you're just gone. Well, I think you can look to other men in your community to help with your kids, you know, emotionally, to sort of uncles and different people, you know, to bring support, emotional support into the family. But it would seem to me that the father factor in the black community is the very, in my mind anyway, it's the number one problem in the black community.
I think that's true.
Because if you don't have fathers, I mean, I don't mean to be crass, but you've got sperm donors.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference between you being a sperm donor and being a father.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, there's got to be a change in the family. In white America too.
See, Tony, I would argue that the United States government, by their policies, causes. The black family didn't used to be this way.
Yeah.
And I say that, the black family, it's the white family today.
So tell me, what you're saying is that a welfare check causes a man to not want to.
Well, they don't get the welfare check if the man's in the house. He's got to go. Okay.
Wow, yeah.
That's what it's all about. The government destroyed the family.
Well,
the black
they
incentivize.
incentivize.
Yeah, but the black family used to be, I'll bet, stronger than white families. Now you think about it. Families that go through adversity and have tough times are often stronger.
Right.
And especially at the end of the Civil War, you know, it was probably easier for most black people to be slaves than what they were thrown into at the end of the war.
Yeah.
You know, they were sharecroppers, you know, and it was probably harder to be a sharecropper than a slave. But those families stuck together, most of them.
Right. That's all they had.
Yeah.
Community, right.
And it wasn't until the government stepped in and I believe purposely destroyed the black family and now the white family, but the black family went first, that all this has happened. You know, and again, I know a lot of really fine black people.
Of course.
But when the white community looks at the black community and what they see on TV, they think, these people are animals.
Yeah. Well, I thought irrational. You know, I thought this is irrational. This is irrational behavior. What does this guy store? You know, there's a guy who was boarding up his windows. He was selling some kind of Chinese food or something. You know, he was boarding up his windows, and on one of the pieces of plywood over his window, he had spray painted the word "open." You know, this poor guy's trying to do business while he's putting up plywood, and he's a black guy.
Because he has to do business to stay in business.
Right, you can't just shut down. So no. I guess he's boarding up the windows for a night, you know. When it gets
and then what happens? They destroy the businesses in their community, and then they got nobody to serve their community for restaurants or stores or anything.
Yeah, why set up shop in a war zone?
Yeah.
When you could set up shop 10 miles away or 20 miles away and not have to deal with any of that.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. I know this was another allegation that came out that was proven to be not true too, was, you know, all the people that are causing these problems are agitators from out of town.
Most of them are.
Well, well, that's what they were saying. But when they analyzed the arrest records, it was 1 in 4 were from out of town.
Oh, really? So there was a lot of locals.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to spin it so it sounds better.
Yeah.
But it's just not.
Yeah, but let me say this, and I don't know this, but I'll bet you the majority of the residents of not Fulton, Ferguson, Missouri, aren't involved in any of this. You know, there's probably a good many of them that don't have time to be involved in it because they got to go to work and sleep.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And if they don't go to work and sleep, they lose their job. And that, I'd almost bet that's the majority of people.
I'd like to think that.
In Ferguson, Missouri.
Yeah.
But we've just got this, and it's a large number, but we've got this minority of people that are just absolutely destroying the reputation of black people.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, you've said it several times. Obviously, not all black people are the same.
No.
You know, not all white people are the same. And so to think that all black people are the same because of what's going on in Ferguson, Missouri, I don't think any sensible person would draw that conclusion. Yeah. You know, but I mean, I get it that there are some real concerns too. Like one of the things is the ratio of black police officers to white police officers in the Ferguson community relative to the ratio of white residents to black residents.
And there's a reason for that. You want me to give it to you?
Well, let me tell you what I think it is.
Okay.
The black people don't want to be police officers.
Well, now that's part of it, but that's not the main reason, probably.
What's the main reason?
The main reason is in the state of Missouri to be a police officer, you either have to have graduated from high school or have a GED. And in major cities in Missouri and the United States, we have a 20% graduation rate of black males. So it's a small pool to choose from. And then from that, many of them don't want to be police officers.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, the problem just kind of swells. It's not, do you think it's that Ferguson doesn't want to hire black police officers? I don't believe that.
No, even the politicians, you know, the mayor's white, was it aldermen or whatever they call them, they're all, majority of them are white.
Well, that must mean that there's a fairly large white population in Ferguson, Missouri.
I think percentage-wise it was 23%.
White?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You know, I'm from that area.
yeah, you're from North St. Louis.
No, but my whole family lived in Florissant, which is just
It's right next door.
Yeah, it's just right there. And you know, there was the Florissant Ferguson School District.
Yeah.
And I believe the school was McClure.
McClure North. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the finest schools in the state.
Yeah.
When I was there, okay? Now, my uncle was the principal of the Hazelwood School District. And now, you know, it's Florissant Ferguson, but the majority of Florissant went to Hazelwood School District because Florissant was just such a huge city, you know. But they're right there, and so I have tremendous familiarity with the area.
Well, I played football in St. Louis as a high school player, and we made it to the state semifinals and played Hazelwood Central in the state semifinals.
Well,
Hazelwood Central.
That's where my uncle was principal.
Yeah, and so I've got friends that played on that team that also got college scholarships to the same college I played at. So I got to meet these guys, you know. So, but I mean, in conclusion to this whole thing, I think people just, I mean, you can't tell them just to calm down. We don't know the facts yet, because they're just not going to calm down. You know, you say, hey, calm down, you don't know the facts yet. I don't care what the facts are.
Yeah, but we have, quote, leaders. Jesse Jackson, worse than Jesse Jackson is Al Sharpton.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesse Jackson's probably actually been helping calm things down, you know, by his rhetoric. But Al Sharpton, he's doing everything he can to stir up all the trouble. You know, when is the black community going to realize that this guy's a negative for him?
It seems to me that public opinion is really swaying away from Al Sharpton.
Yeah.
I mean, I might just be not having the right beat on what people think, but I haven't heard anyone say, you know, that Al Sharpton, he's really got it together.
Yeah.
You know, he's really sharp. He's a sharp cookie. And I think the guy's intelligent, but I think his ideology is, I don't know.
He's sure not helping black people.
Yeah, he seems to make a living by inflaming problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Anyway, we've talked about this a lot. Okay, have we beat it to death?
Well, no, probably not.
Probably not. But we really need to move on to another topic.
Yeah.
We need to talk about ISIS because that's what's really going on. And I want to make this transition by reading a joke.
Okay.
Okay, I went on the internet and looked up Islamic humor. And this is a joke that Muslims tell each other.
Okay.
Okay? A man walking in New York's Central Park sees a Rottweiler attacking a little girl. He subdues the dog and saves her life. A passing Fox News reporter says, "You're a hero. Tonight's TV news bulletin will say, 'Brave New Yorker saves child's life.' The man replies, 'I'm a tourist from Saudi Arabia.' That night, the news on Fox says, 'Islamic extremist kills New York dog.'"
Yeah.
You know, I can't think of anything else that more accurately portrays Islamic attitude than this joke. It is, we Muslims are the most abused people on the globe. That's what they believe. Yeah, we're victims. And in a sense, that I think translates from these, I'm going to call them animals, in Ferguson, Missouri. You know, they have this abused person mentality. And because they're abused, they think there's nothing wrong in them doing all kinds of horrific acts.
And you think in their mind it justifies it.
It justifies it because they're abused. Now, I don't think either one of those groups are particularly abused. As a matter of fact, I pulled up a video of a black man, young black man, and he is just shouting. He's so angry. And he says, "Black people, wake up. The problem is us." You know, he said, "I've been stopped. I'm a young black man. I've been stopped by cops many times." And he said, "You know what? I've never been shot or arrested." He said, "I drive a BMW and have a good job. You can do that too." You know, he says it's our attitude is the problem.
Yeah.
And I think he's right. But anyway, I want to transition into ISIS and this attitude of
The victim mentality.
the victim mentality. And Muslims really believe that they are the most victimized people on earth.
Yeah.
Okay? And I also Googled one time and studied the Muslim invasion, conquest, and occupation of Spain. Okay? And for about 600 years, Muslims occupied Spain. Now, Spain was Christian at the time. Now, if you read Islamic sources, and that's where I went to, and you read about this occupation of Spain and whatnot, the Spanish people were made demis.
Yeah.
Now, you know what a demi is.
I do, but our listeners
Okay,
might not know.
okay. Well, a demi is not a slave, okay? But a demi is a second-class citizen. It's a non-Muslim in a Muslim nation. They have no legal rights in the courts. 1/2 of their income must be taken away from them and given to Muslims. They can't build a house that's taller than any Muslim's house. Their houses of worship cannot have crosses or stars of David on them. They can go to their houses of worship, but no sound can come from their house of worship. In other words, they got to keep it down low enough inside so that no one outside could hear what's going on. If they have bells, they cannot be rung. If their house of worship needs repair, they are forbidden from doing any repair work. Okay? If a demi is walking down the street and is approaching a Muslim, the demi must step into the gutter and let the Muslim pass. Demis wear special clothing so they can be identified as low-life scum. Okay? I mean, there's just all kinds. All of what they do are designed to humiliate and demean the demi. Now remember,
Did you mention the tax, the 50% tax?
50% of their income must be given up to Muslims.
Yeah.
Okay? And there's a whole lot more rules. It's much more oppressive than what I've told.
Yeah.
Okay? Anyway, the Spanish Christians lived under that for 600 years. Okay? Now, when you read Islamic sources about that period in Spain, they will just go on and on about how that's the golden period of Islam.
Islamic tolerance.
Yeah, and the golden period of Islamic tolerance. They did not behead those people. Okay? And they just go on and on about how wonderfully tolerant they were. Okay? That's the Islamic mindset. And here's where it comes from. It comes from Muslims believe that they worship the only true God and that no one else really has a right to live.
Yeah.
And that is what Muhammad taught and practiced. And that's what Islam has always taught for 1400 years. It's never changed. It cannot change. It wouldn't be Islam if it changed.
Right, it would be hijacked
Yeah, it would be hijacked.
by
Okay.
extremists.
Yeah, now, I wanted to say all that to kind of set the stage. We see some things going on today, and we never see the news media say, this is true and accurate Islam.
No, they don't say that.
They don't say that.
They say it's extremism. It's been hijacked. It's militarized. It's jihadism.
Yeah.
They never say this is fundamentalism.
But if that's what the founder of Islam did, if they're accurately copying the founder of Islam, then it's not been hijacked. It is true and accurate Islam. And they are accurately following the example of Muhammad. People need to get this. You know, my big thing is, and I've said this over and over again, if we would just obey the 10 Commandments, all of our problems would go away.
Yeah.
Islam makes it a holy and sacred duty to violate every one of the 10 Commandments. You know, it is an obligation to be a murderer, a thief, a rapist, a torturer, a slaver. Those are holy obligations for Muslims. As a matter of fact, what are noble professions among Muslims? You might think, well, a doctor would be a noble profession, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. I guess I would argue in reality, the most noble profession on earth is to be a farmer. We all got to eat, right? Okay, that's a pretty noble profession. As a matter of fact, this is interesting. In Chinese culture, under Confucianism, even the emperor went out and planted a crop. Now, it was symbolic, and he didn't struggle and work in the fields like everybody else. But ancient Chinese culture revered the farmer as the most noble profession. Okay, in Islam, there is no profession more noble than the jihadist. All other professions are unimportant compared to the jihadist. And this is why Islamic culture can only prosper if it holds other people as demis. Because it's a parasitic culture. Because a culture that says, the highest attribute is to be a warrior.
Kill.
Is to kill. How can that culture prosper? I agree with ancient Chinese culture. I think the highest and most noble profession is to produce food.
Yeah.
That at least makes sense. Everything's based on that.
Right.
But anyway, we look at these things, and you may want to talk about some of the things we see ISIS and Boko Haram doing, and why what they're doing is accurately following the teachings of Muhammad. What do you see going on through ISIS?
Well, I guess recently they've just beheaded in front of the camera a journalist. I think he worked for the Time magazine, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like in my own heart, I don't know if it's the human side or what, but I have any amount of compassion I had is almost it's down to nothing.
You mean for Muslims?
Not Muslims worldwide, but for this particular group.
No.
Like if Barack Obama got on the television and said, "Hey, we're revving up the military. We're going into Iraq. We're gonna go blow to blow with these guys," I'd be like, okay. I wouldn't be like, "Oh no, we shouldn't do that. We don't have the money for that. We can't afford it." It's like, to me, it's like a cancer on the human race.
It is. Islam is a malignant cancer.
It's like this cannot be tolerated. This is disgusting. It is disgusting.
Yeah.
You go into a village and you're a grown man and you grab a little girl in a dress and you cut her head off. What is going on in that guy's mind? What would make a guy do something like that?
Or Boko Haram. Okay.
Yeah.
You go into a village, you go to the school, and you kill all the male students and kidnap all the female students to use as sex slaves.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Now, you say it's despicable and disgusting, but it's exactly what Muhammad did. That's exactly what he did.
Recorded in the Quran.
Yeah. Now, and it also says in the Quran, the highest form of devotion to Allah is to emulate the life and actions of Muhammad.
Right.
Well, they're just trying to show devotion to their God. And think about what Islam is. What does Islam do? It takes the most vile base of human behavior and it says, this is a holy act.
This is good.
This is a holy act. Going into other people's cities and killing all the men and taking all the women as sex slaves and taking the little boys that are young enough to be molded to be used as cannon fodder for, to be raised up so that they can fight and be cannon fodder in your next battle. This is the most noble thing you can do. What God sanctions that? Because I think there is a spiritual being that sanctions that. This is the most demonic, satanic evil the world has ever known. I don't know any other way to describe Islam. Muslims, your God is evil. A God that motivates people to do these things is evil.
Yeah, I mean, the proof's in the behavior, you know, and I've heard a cliche, and I think it's apropos, you know, they say that not every terrorist is a Muslim, and not every Muslim's a terrorist, but almost every single terrorist is a Muslim.
Yeah, there's pretty few exceptions.
You know, and you've got exceptions. You've got some wacky ideological people that are out there that perform acts of terror. But it would seem worldwide that the majority of the terrorist acts that are perpetuated against humanity come from Islamic ideology, and they come from that the teachings of Muhammad, like you described. You know, Muhammad was not Jesus.
No,
Muhammad was not a healer. He was not a miracle worker. He wasn't raised from the dead. He was
an evil warlord.
He was a warrior. He was a slave trader. He was a polygamist. He married a 6-year-old girl. You know, his track record as the founder of Islam is it's so far away from the life of Jesus Christ. Like you said, it's not just off the beaten path. It's some of the vilest human behavior a human being could ever carry out and perpetuate.
You know, you look at barbarians in history worldwide and what they do. They storm into a village, you know, kill all the men, rape all the women, plunder all the goods. That's what barbarians do. You know, it was the Vikings, Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, and Muhammad. How's he any different than them? We look at all the others as the horrible people of history. But it's exactly what Muhammad did, and it's what his followers do today. And how do we look at that and say, oh, that's a religion of peace and tolerance? Yeah. Are we crazy?
Yeah, I think people are waking up.
Well, it is hard in the face of the evidence.
And that's what I was just going to mention. That Twitter has been a little loosey-goosey with what they show. You know, if someone wants to cut somebody's head off and post it to Twitter, Twitter was like, go ahead. But now they've began to restrict the gruesome imagery, and I don't think they should.
No, they shouldn't.
I think they should let the world see what it's all about.
Hey, if an Islamic terrorist cuts my head off, the more people that see it, the better. We need to be woken up. You know, and you know, you may disagree with me. I think our children should see this.
I don't know if they need to see it, but I know they need to know about it. You know, I've talked to my kids about it.
Let me tell you, how can I put it? A formative event in my life. When I was in high school, I went to Southwest High School in St. Louis. We had what was known as advisory or homeroom. I don't know if you had that when you were in high school, but you'd spend about 15 minutes, you'd hear announcements and do various things. There was usually a good bit of dead time, okay? Well, I had a teacher, and his name was Carlton Nebel, okay? He was my homeroom teacher. And everybody thought he was a little bit nerdy, okay? I mean, but in that dead time, he used to show us clips of films of the communist revolution in Russia. And I mean, he showed it in all its brutal force. And I was in high school at the time, and I can remember watching this, and I guarantee you it made an impression on me of the cruelty and brutality of communism and the depravity of man. And I think we need to not look at the world through rose-colored glasses and think everything is wonderful in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it made me a more serious person. Now you may say, well, you know, I look at you and you're just way too serious, you know. But what's wrong with the world? Most of us don't know what's going on.
Yeah. You can't act if you're ignorant. You know, if you
Right.
don't know what's happening, you can't. What was it, Edwin Burke? You know, all that has to happen for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. So the default setting, like you said earlier, the depravity of man, the default setting for man is depravity. And so people, if the light don't get involved, it's going to...
Okay, that I may have said this another way, but I want to bring it back around. What is Islam? It is a religion where you're taught, if you follow your depraved nature, you're the most holy person on earth. That's Islam. Now, what is Christianity? Realize you've got a depraved nature and you need a Savior.
Right, to save you from yourself.
To save you from the depraved nature you have. They couldn't be more different. And I want to say this too. How does Islam win converts? They militarily go into a country and they cut off heads,
That's one way.
Well, that's the way they're doing it today.
Yeah.
It's the way they've been doing it for 1,400 years. Okay? Now, I'm not going to say that Christianity was never spread by the sword, because that would be false. In most cases, Christianity was spread by some ruler saying, hey, this is the religion this kingdom's adopting.
Right.
You could look at...
Constantine.
Not Charles Martel. Constantine would be an example. Vladimir, Grand Prince of Kiev, who made all of Russia Christian. I'm trying to think. It was Charlemagne's grandfather or great-grandfather. I think it was the father of Charles Martel, and his name leaves me. But he made all of France Christian. But you're going to be Christians. March down to the river and be baptized. That's happened. Okay? But in my lifetime, how is Christianity spread to foreign nations? Well, the way I'm familiar with is we sent missionaries over there. I know missionaries. I have friends that are missionaries. I have a friend who was an agricultural missionary to Kenya. Okay? Actually, and Uganda. At a time when Uganda was very unsettled under Idi Amin. But he went in and he drilled wells so these people had clean water to drink. He showed them good agricultural techniques. He did what he could to help these people. And in helping them, then he shared the gospel with them.
Right. He didn't cut their heads off.
He didn't cut their heads off. And if they said, we don't want your Jesus. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
But he offered them Jesus.
Right.
Which I believe is the way it has to be. We got to wake up and see what Islam is. Islam is the most malignant, cancerous growth on the human race that there has ever been. And it needs to be eliminated.
In its fundamentalist form, it makes the Nazis look like nothing.
Oh gosh, Nazis were fine, kind people compared to
It's
Islam.
unbelievable the stuff that's going on.
Well, as a matter of fact,
Unbelievable.
I recently viewed video, matter of fact, I think you forwarded it to me, where Hitler was praising Islam and saying, if the Germans were Muslims, we'd rule the world.
Yeah.
This is the type of ideology Hitler wanted the German people to embrace.
Christianity was too weak.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Hitler's mind. So, like I said, I don't have any children of drafting age, that would go.
You got some getting close.
Yeah, I've got some that are coming into that age, but I don't know, when I see these headlines and I've watched these videos, I think, oh my gosh, we've got to do something. We cannot just...
But here's the thing. As long as we say the enemy is Islamic terrorism, okay, we'll never solve this problem. We've got to say Islam is the enemy of mankind. And we have to work...
Free man. Free society.
No! Islam is the enemy of Muslims. What's it going to do to them? It's going to send them to an eternity in hell. Am I wrong?
No.
If you're a Muslim, you will spend eternity in hell. I don't want Muslims to spend eternity in hell. I want them to accept the only way to salvation through Jesus Christ and spend eternity in heaven with me. That's what I want.